Okay, well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our Semantle webinar on reaching a segment of one, collecting and utilizing data to create a personalized user journey. My name is Misty Dykema, and I am one of the principals and co-owners here at Semantle. I've been with the company for about 15 years, and for those of you who may not know Semantle, we are a roll up your sleeves, in it to win it marketing agency, and we focus heavily in the digital sphere for both hardworking brands and what we call quality of life brands. So we're just excited to be with you today. I will be co-presenting with Abby Bell. She is our Executive Technology Director, and I'm going to give Abby just a minute here to introduce herself. Abby?
Hey everyone, my name is Abby, and as Misty said, I'm a technology director at Semantle. I've been in the marketing automation space for about 12 years now and learned quite a bit. I hope to share a little bit of that with you guys today.
Great, thanks Abby. So I'm excited to be presenting with Abby because Abby has been with Semantle for about 5 years now, and Abby is definitely a technologist at heart, whereas I definitely come from more of a marketing and content strategy background. So hopefully through our presentation today, you'll get a really good feel, depending on where you are in your journey, of both sort of the content and marketing, campaign-based principles, and then a lot of the data and technology as well. Before I get started, a few logistics. I wanted to let you know that anybody is welcome to ask questions throughout. Please use your control panel and go ahead and submit questions at any time. If we're at a good stopping point, we'll go ahead and answer those questions. And if not, we'll definitely save them to the end and try to address them. Also want to note that we are going to make the recording available to those that have signed up for the webinar. So if you want to follow back on any of the concepts we talked through today, that will be made available to you. So before we jump in, we wanted to ask everyone on the call to weigh in on a quick poll. And our first question here is really trying to get a better sense of who's on the call. So while we had a list of who signed up, we'd really like to know, of those of you who are on the call, would you say that the majority of your time in your day-to-day is spent more on building marketing and content strategies, leveraging data and analytics, or implementing new systems and technologies? Go ahead and weigh in and we'll report out the progress here. It looks like the responses are starting to come in. It looks like the majority of our participants here are saying that they definitely are focused more in the content space. So actually everyone. So that's really good to know. So hopefully a lot of our insights that we have to share with you today about data and technology are sort of new and new learnings. And hopefully we can cover all of those things. So the first thing that we wanted to go through is, what is marketing automation? That's really going to be the focus of our presentation today. And like I said, when I met Abby, who's our Executive Technology Director, about 5 years ago, the concept of marketing automation was all new to me. There was a lot of things that, even though I had been in the industry for quite a long time, she was talking about really technical aspects of her job that I just couldn't get my head around. And so I just want to acknowledge that is a common concern that we hear from clients and contacts all the time. And so that's really what our focus of our presentation is going to be today. But what I learned from Abby quickly is that marketing automation wasn't just email marketing. I think that a lot of folks have the tendency to believe that we get all of these emails in our inbox, and that's what marketing automation is all about. And while that's a piece of it, it's certainly not all of it. In addition, Abby taught me that it's really not just content management, although that is a piece of it that we're going to be talking a lot about today. There's also a perception that marketing automation is only for certain brands. And so by that, you can think about these automated communications that you get from B2C companies or more of a retail or e-commerce sector. We're actually going to be giving quite a few examples today of how we've seen marketing automation play out well to manage the customer experience in a variety of industries. And then the final sort of myth about marketing automation is that it can be really impersonal, meaning that we all feel like we get bombarded with spam and all these communications. But if you do it right and you really understand your users, it can actually be incredibly personal and actually very welcomed by the target audiences. So what is it then? If it's not all of those things, it is automating any online marketing effort. So it's not just email. You're going to see us talk about landing pages and media and a variety of different channels today to really make it easier for people to do their job without as much manpower as it required in the past. It's also customizing the user experience. So not just the user experience in terms of the interface, but the entire customer experience. And we'll talk through a few of those examples as well. It's building relationships with your target audiences over time. And it's driving leads and nurturing sales. One of the things that I love about Abby's approach that she'll talk through is the integration of marketing and sales. And so one of the very first things that we encourage clients to do before they jump into marketing automation is bring their marketing and sales people together and try to understand what they need to know about leads so that they can close them more quickly. And we'll give you plenty of examples of that today as we go through the presentation. So what marketing automation is really, it's just marketing. It's getting to the right person with the right message at the right time in a really measurable and scalable way to achieve those qualified leads. And so once I got there and understood that from Abby, the rest of it came pretty simple. And so let's just look at a few really good examples to kind of get our head around ones that we feel like are doing this pretty well today. So just this week, I was out shopping for a rug for my living room, and being a busy mom, I couldn't finish the transaction. So immediately, based on my behavior online, I got an email with a coupon for a discount. I was offered the opportunity to join a club, Club O for Overstock, and then I was offered a variety of different products that I might be interested in. Now, this is a pretty basic example. All of us are pretty used to getting these kinds of communications in the e-commerce space. And I know for me, it's really helpful because it allows me to log back on and look at the products I'm interested in and even get an incentive to do so. I also like this email because it provided me not just sort of bottom of the funnel product content, but it helped me engage more with the Overstock brand. On the flip side, though, we actually love to play in the space where we help clients think through how they can improve their customer experience through these communications. So this is another example I got this week from my daughter's Girl Scout troop. My daughter recently became a Girl Scout, and as a busy mom, I kept missing the meetings, and I didn't know when I was supposed to sign up for the next round. And so over the course of a week, I got a series of helpful text messages and emails to remind me to go ahead and renew her membership and to come to the next meeting. And I think that's an example of a customer experience type engagement that has nothing to do necessarily with selling a product, but just reminders and helpful hints to keep engaged with the brand. This sort of communication can also work when a brand messes up. If there's a poor customer experience, there's a way to trigger these communications and sort of apologize or keep that consumer coming back to the brand by making it right. So in those examples, you can see that those were the kinds of communications that were triggered based on my behavior. They were very targeted to me, that they sort of understood who I was as a user, and they helped nurture me to continue my relationship with the brand. So those are all really good examples and things that we're going to be talking about as we go through today. But in order to do that, and this is where Abby's technical knowledge comes into play, one of the things that we had to learn as an organization to help our clients through this is that it takes a whole lot of logic and thinking about all of those interactions behind the scenes and playing out a variety of user journeys with timing. How much time should be between those communications? How can we get people to subscribe to continue those communications? And this is where, sort of the auto magic, as Abby would call it, happens behind the scenes so that we can get those really beautiful communications in our inbox. But there's also some really bad examples. And one that we always like to share, our brand director, Alicia, shared with me that she got this email the other day from a company asking her to buy dentures. Now, Alicia is a 33-year-old female, and this obviously was not a really good targeted communication based on her demographic and who she was as a person. So this ended up being a bad example and a lot of wasted time and money and probably not that great of a brand experience. These are the kinds of things that can cause users to opt out. And, hopefully if you're laying the strategy right from the start, you're not delivering these kinds of messages. So in the end, the way we talk about marketing automation at Simantel and sort of reaching that segment of one is that essentially what you're trying to do is build a relationship with your target audiences. And certainly when you're just starting to date someone or build a relationship over time, you wouldn't sort of jump right up and say, hey, will you marry me? But unfortunately, that's what a lot of brands end up doing. They sort of put those product offers right in front of their consumers and say, hey, do you want to buy? And we actually believe that there's sort of a softer sell, if you will, to really nurture those users through the buying process. So for the rest of our presentation today, you're going to hear us talk about Dave and you, the marketer and the companies that you work for and the organizations you lead. How do we make Dave and you the perfect match? And what are some strategies we can use to do that? And so before I hand it over to Abby to dig into the technical weeds, I wanted to make sure that everyone on the call sort of was familiar with some foundational strategies that you can use to really understand your users before you ever launch anything. And the first tool to do that well is called a persona. And many of you may have personas within your organizations. We define personas as fictional Franken people that are purpose-built from factual data that can include both primary and secondary research. So when we say Franken people, based on some research that you can do, you can actually sort of aggregate different attributes and components of people's lives and give them a face and a name that you can actually think about when building your strategies. And there's lots of ways to get there. You know, even if you don't have a big research budget or a lot of time to do this, you can do some very simple primary research you conduct yourself through interviews or surveys or questionnaires with, we recommend, only a handful of your customers, maybe 16 to 20 total, where you can start to really speak directly to your users and not make assumptions based on how your organization thinks about your customers. You can also do secondary research. There's plenty of information online to begin to inform who your users really are. But in the end, we feel that it's really important to establish and document who the people you're trying to reach are. Give them a name, give them a face, and document their online, behavior, the kinds of questions they have, and where they go to find information. Without this shared knowledge base, it's really hard to build a strategy that is uniquely targeted to these individuals. Plus, it helps with internal engagement buy-in overall to make sure that the customers you want to reach have a name and a face. And what's really great is when you think about that user, you can begin to think about their buying cycle. So another sort of foundational component to marketing automation is establishing each of your persona's user journeys. And this is a really generic example you see on screen, but while journeys can come in lots of shapes and sizes, we really think it's important to think through that customer lens for all channels. How would they engage on your website? How would they engage with your internal employee phone center? If you have inside sales, what do you want your distribution network to do to engage with these folks? Because all of those channels can actually be automated and sort of aligned to make sure that there is a really cohesive and consistent customer experience across the board. And then the final thing I have to share with you as a foundational component is, beyond the personas and the journeys, a really thorough content assessment is critical for reaching that segment of one. So all of us as marketers have so much content. Sometimes it's unwieldy and it lives in a lot of different places. And so doing sort of the heavy lifting of auditing where that information is, in what channels, what questions and pain points it solves for, and then how it aligns back to your personas can actually help your implementation team when they go to sort of execute your marketing automation efforts to know what content is available to meet the user's needs. And this is going to continue to come up throughout our conversation today, but this is often a misstep, and it's so critical to have that content sort of tagged in your arsenal so that as you're measuring your user's behavior, you can push out the right information at the right time. So before I hand it to Abby, let's take another quick poll here. I'm going to ask you to weigh in on where your organization needs more help. So you should be able to see the poll now. So would you say, based on that early overview I gave, that your organization needs more help understanding basically what marketing is and what it can offer, similar to the space I was in, that I just didn't understand the concept? Would you say that you are more likely that you need to sort of think about personas, journeys, and content strategy? Or would you say maybe it's a third option altogether, that you need to really use data and technology to reach your users? It looks like the answers are coming in. It's not so much understanding marketing automation, it's more the second two options here, that you need to agree on your personas and journeys. And some of you are saying data and technology, which is actually a really great transition, because Abby's going to sort of dig in and help us understand how data and technology can enable those interactions.
Awesome.
Take it away, Abby.
So thanks, Misty. So Misty talked about our ideal person being Dave, and now we're going to talk a little bit about how we get to know Dave. So think about in your normal day-to-day when you're talking to people, when your salespeople are trying to talk to prospects and customers, a lot of what they look at is body language, right? So it's said that a lot of what we say isn't verbal, but it's nonverbal. And in some of these images, you can see it's very clear what the person is thinking, even though they're not talking to you, right? So in face-to-face communications, that's pretty easy to gather. But how do we do that digitally, right? If we're looking at marketing automation and marketing campaigns, looking at building the relationship, we're going to have to know what their digital body language is saying, right? Whether it's for prospects or customers or donors. So on the screen, you're going to see a couple of different types of body language that we gather digitally. These are all from different marketing automation platforms as we try to stay agnostic here at Simantel to make sure that the strategy is really dictating the technology. So once you give us your strategy, then we can tell you this technology is probably going to work the best, or this is how we would track the person. So on this slide, you see there's email conversion. They engaged with an email, or they visited a certain website, or they liked a certain social post, they completed a form. So all of those different activities come together to show us what one person looks like through the life of their lead. So this is me, and it's my example. And this is actually from the SharpSpring Marketing Automation System. And I think it gives a great view of all the different touch points that I've been engaged with. So at the top, you see it pulled in my image from my LinkedIn profile. It links out to my Twitter and LinkedIn, which are public links. And then throughout that green timeline, there's different icons, right? So the little globe means I visited a website. I opened an email. Twitter means I either liked or retweeted something that Simantel had put out. So this type of timeline view really tells you a lot about the person that you're trying to create a relationship with. One of the things that it can tell you is where that person is in your sales funnel. Remember, Misty said we can't talk marketing without sales, right? The whole reason that we as marketers love our jobs is because we're trying to prepare a prospect, a customer, a donor for the sales side of the house. So some of that activity can tell you, is Dave in the awareness stage where he knows he has a need and knows that your organization can fill it, or is he further down the funnel in the consideration phase where he's looking to your organization to fulfill that need? Maybe he's shown that he's actually in the evaluation phase where he's saying, how good of a job can your company or your organization do to fulfill that need? And this is the stage where we capture him as a customer. So some of these signals for this evaluation stage might be he fills out a form that says, yes, I need someone to contact me or request a quote on a product, etc. So during that stage is where salespeople kind of take it from there, right? And they close them, they're a customer. And the last stage that we have on here is one that a lot of companies forget, but it's the loyalty stage, right? We as marketers talk a lot about leads and prospects and getting people over to sales. But once they've committed to you, right? You're like engaged with this person now. They're your customer. It's important to make sure that you have somewhere soft for them to land and continue that relationship so that they can be a true brand advocate for you. So going through those different phases, there are different places where we might need to ask Dave for some information to help pull him through that next stage of the funnel. And I will definitely say that data is a new type of currency. So the more information you're asking for from someone, the more you need to offer them back. And there's a couple different ways to collect that type of data. So if Dave came to your site and the main call to action was talk to a salesperson now, and when he clicked that, you opened up a 25 field form, it's probably not going to have a great conversion rate. So one of the things that we can do with technology is have micro conversions and build Dave's profile over time. So maybe when he visits the site, the first call to action that he sees is, hey, keep in touch and fill out our newsletter form. Well, now we have a couple pieces of information. We can have his name, his email, his country for compliance reasons. And then as Dave gets that newsletter, he engages with the email, goes to a landing page, maybe with an article or a brochure download. And the website and the technology recognizes, hey, we already know Dave and we already know some of his information, so let's ask him new stuff this time. So the second time around, we can get his city where he's in, maybe so we can start connecting him to a salesperson, find out his industry and his company name in case you're doing any kind of account-based marketing. So once we have that from Dave, he'll come back and perhaps visit a different landing page on the next email or as part of pulling him deeper into the website and watch a video. That video might be a DIY video, or here's a little bit about what happens to your contribution when you contribute to our organization. And there we can ask even more information. So the deeper and the more committed Dave is to us, the more he may be willing to give us information. So now he's had 3 different experiences where we're asking him different questions on each part, and hopefully he's having a good experience on each of these and is willing to give that information. So now we have a really pretty good picture of Dave, and our next thing is how do we really connect with him, right? We've gathered some information, now how do we give him the data that he needs? So there are a couple of different ways to do that, and this is just a quick example of one. So from the information we have, Dave might fit into a persona where social is his thing. That's where he gets his news. That's where he gets peer recommendations. So we may have some social display or social ads that lead back to the website. So Dave's already interacted with us a little bit. We're retargeting him on Facebook or his social channel of choice. That ad leads him back to our website. And maybe now is the time where he takes that action and says, yes, I want someone in sales to contact me. If so, then he would flow into our marketing automation system and then the sales CRM system and then converts, right, and is a customer. Or we may get him on an offline ad where he comes to the website and maybe he's not ready to take action yet, but it was just enough to pique his interest, or he may become an influencer in the ultimate decision. So maybe he doesn't take that action, so he's not ready to go to sales yet, but we'll keep him as a marketing automation prospect and bring him back into another retargeting campaign or feed him different information based on what we know about him. So I realize that can all be a little theoretical. So we wanted to pull in some examples of things that we've done for clients before. So stick with me through these and they'll make sense kind of when I have the aha moment. So in example 1, we might have one of those landing pages where we're trying to collect data by user need, right? So we've had campaigns that are very kind of gritty and what keeps you up at night, what's your pain point, and just kind of get right to the point with it and say, tell us your role. So now we kind of know who you are, maybe what industry you're in. And then we may ask another question like, tell us your pain points, right? Just very flat out for people that want a quick solution and don't need a lot of fluff, marketing fluff. And then what we do is we'll say, here, you came in on this landing page, we asked you 2 questions, and now based on what you told us, we're going to serve up different landing pages to the orange person versus the blue person, right? So it's literally 2 different landing pages that are all fed by the data from those 2 questions and have completely different dynamic content. So if I'm the orange person, I get solutions to pain point 1 with industry images and calls to action to certain downloads or case studies specific to my pain point. If I'm the blue person, then I get the second version of that landing page with information that's all relevant to me. So by asking those few points, we can deliver a much more customized experience. So orange person can then get an email following that landing page experience that says, hey, we understand these are your pain points. And we know that this is the kind of content that we've seen you perhaps ingest on the website before. So let us follow up with this confirmation email that can lead you to a couple of different things. It can offer you an SMS or mobile sign up. It can send you to a Facebook group that maybe has peers where you could get information, or it might be a deeper landing page with an in-depth case study. The point that I want to make on this slide is that all of these options can be different if you know what that person wants. For example, this persona, or what we've gathered from this person, we might know that social is their preferred channel, right? Whereas another person, the call to action there might not be visit our social channel. It might be here, click here to talk to Bob, who's your assigned rep in your territory, right? So that if they value that one-to-one human relationship, we give them what they need. So that's our example one, where we're very straight and to the point, and you have problems, we want to solve them. In example two, it's a little softer, it's a little more fun, it's got a little bit more of a marketing hook, if you will. So the example here is build your perfect burger and win, right? So this is an example where we're collecting data through an incentive, right? And the win is the incentive, which can be a trip or a one-on-one with a celebrity sponsor or free merchandise, something like that. So in this example, we're asking people to build their perfect burger, right? So you choose your bun, you choose your meat, your toppings, etc. And the thing is, it's fun and it's cool, and we can show you your burger at the end, and then you can share that burger on social media, and your friends can be like, you're totally a peanut butter and jelly hamburger, and I'm all cheese and bacon, right? But what we're doing throughout that interaction is actually gathering data, right? So Abby's definitely a peanut butter and jelly burger type of person. So now that we know that, when we follow up with her, we can show her pictures of her burger or other toppings that she might like to add to her burger. We can ask her to post that on social media and then choose a winner and then make a bigger deal out of, this is the ultimate burger, this is the person that won. But all of that hook is just to say, here's what you told us about how you like your burgers, and now we're going to give you that content back to you, whether that's a landing page or whether that's a YouTube channel that tells you how to perfectly stack your burgers without making them squishy, right? All of that data that you've given us in that fun and engaging way, we're going to use that to communicate back to you in a way that's super relevant. And nobody else may make the burger exactly the way you do. And that's okay, because what we're going to do is have a huge library of content that we can pull from to populate some of these experiences for you. So, time for another poll. If you guys will go with us on this. If your segmentation efforts that you do today, how could they best be improved? Is that measuring the body language digitally that we talked about? Is it taking into consideration more user interaction, having those library of content to exchange? Or, yep, Abby, what you're saying makes 100% sense, and we're already doing all of these awesome things. Let's see what the poll says. Split again. Okay, so right in the middle, progressively profile on user interaction, and then offering information in exchange for insights. Yep. So we will definitely cover some of those in the rest of these slides, so that's awesome. Let's talk a little bit now about some trends in both marketing and marketing automation that might help you guys get where you need to be. So one thing that I will say is that marketing automation can be complex. The technology landscape that we have to deal with today, the technology stacks, all the different apps, and so many applications having open APIs can make it really complicated. And there's a lot out there to choose from, right? So you guys have probably seen slides like this before. Back in 2011, there were what we thought to be a lot of marketing technologies. But if you look down even to 2017, there are a ton there. And you may have 5, 10, 20, 50 different marketing technologies in your stack, or you may have 3, and this slide gives you some anxiety. And either way, that's okay. What I would encourage you guys to do is let the strategy drive which of these many technologies you pick up to use. For example, if you decide that our emails really need a facelift, like people aren't really engaging with them, our open rates might be below industry benchmark, we need something in our emails to make them better. One of the things that we've done for some of our clients is offer real-time data within emails. So if you've ever been like a loyalty customer for like a Dunkin' Donuts or Starbucks or something like that, you may get some of these app pushes or emails yourself. The first example on the left is a map. So if you have locations, sales locations or stores, etc., the cool thing about this map is that when you open that email, it'll geolocate to where you're opening the email, and it'll give you the closest store, dealer, distributor, sales rep near you when you open that email. And it'll give you the standard Google map and some basic information about that location. The cool thing about this is, especially if you have customers who travel or global or national locations, is that they can open that email over and over again. And if they're in different locations, that map will actually change and update to where they are. So they can really, truly find help when they need it in proximity. The second example is weather, literally within an email, that also geolocates where you're opening that email and says, oh, the weather in Blue Ridge, Texas today is humid and 70 degrees. And some might think, yeah, that's nice to have, but how does that relate to content? So you may not actually put the actual weather alert in your email, but what you can do is say you have national customers, right? And there's a flood going on in the southeast part of the country. You can create an email, and if people are there in that part of the country, then your content can be geared towards flood assessment or protect your products or make sure you're doing X, Y, and Z to winterize if it's wintertime in the north. So if you can have that type of physical location connection back to your content, it's incredibly relevant to the person opening it. And the reaction is, wow, this organization really understands what's going on with me right now. And it makes for an amazing user experience. So that's within email. The second thing I have here is interactive content. So you guys are all content marketers, 100% of you, which is amazing. You have brochures, PDFs, websites, blogs, Twitter posts, etc. One of the things that we found to be really successful is interactive content, which can take several different forms, but it requires active engagement for the participant. And what have we talked about? If they're engaging, they're giving me data that I can use, right? Whether it's an interactive PDF where I can see how far they scrolled through it, or I can pop a gate after the first 2 pages of that PDF. No matter what type of interactive content you have, you can be gathering data. Some of the examples here are from SnapApp, and these are other organizations that have used that technology to create their interactive content. So these are ways, kind of like the burger hook, right, on the left with the emoji, which emoji fits you best. But the questions that deliver your emoji are, what do you do on the daily basis? How big is your company? All of those type things that take us back to understanding a lead. So these are both ways that lead gen data can be collected and then automatically sent to your marketing automation platform. So the reason that interactive content works is because if you think about in your own personal life, everything knows a little bit about you, right? Like Google's constantly pushing messages to your phone. Everything's kind of personalized. Direct mail has like, Dear Abby, here's a picture of your house and what the taxes are on it this year, right? Everything seems to be getting hyper personalized. And what interactive content does is it's kind of an intake method, right? For you to be able to gather that data, and also keep that user engaged, right? So when something is interactive, it definitely has, it usually has a higher click rate. The conversion rate on it is better than just a form on a landing page, and the completion rate is crazy high, depending, of course, how long you make it. So these are different ways through those quizzes and tools that we've found a great way to get information back to our clients so that they can provide that relevant information. Even if you don't have a lead gen form on your interactive content, just the answers that people give while they're going through it can be really telling and informative to find out more about your audience or prospect base. So let's look at more trends. I think, Misty, this is where you were going to talk to us a little bit about the other trends that we wanted to cover and what we can gather from those.
Absolutely. Thanks, Abby. And what I love about those examples that you shared is that I know through the years we've talked about how if you can dream up something that you want to do with marketing automation, chances are there's a technology that already exists that would enable that interaction. So I think that's really exciting for the marketers on the phone to be thinking about as they sort of apply those examples to their world. So I'm actually going to take us in a little bit different direction here. We're going to talk now about kind of what I said at the beginning of some of those foundational elements that are critical for marketing automation to be successful. And so you see this trend that we're talking about here is actually based on our actual experience working with clients today. And that's this idea that organizations are going to probably start pulling back a little bit in their investment in technology and simply email campaigns, which can be a really fun place to start because these tools that Abby talks about allows you to do so much. And we're seeing that clients are actually saying, you know, we've done a lot of things, but have they been the right things? And maybe we need to pull back a little bit and align on a strategy. And for those of you who say you're content marketers, this can actually be a really exciting thing for you because when they pull back and focus on aligning across the organization, it really requires almost this bonus trend of a shift to thinking more about their content strategy and their tagging strategy and how the data that they're capturing on their users is actually enabling those really custom one-to-one interactions that I know we all seek to strive for. So to give you a little bit of context of what I mean by that, so within the 4 or 5 years that we've been playing heavily in this space, you know, email campaigns used to look like this. Clients would come to us and say, okay, you know, we have this landing page, we have this form, build me an email newsletter or a nurture that, you know, has 2 or 3 or 10 different emails that we might send out to a user over time. And we're still doing that today. And there's a lot of use cases where that makes a ton of good sense, depending on who those targets are and sort of what interaction you're trying to drive. However, what has ended up happening, and I'm sure that many of you can resonate with this on the call, is that especially in highly matrixed organizations where independent groups or business units have sort of developed independent email campaigns on a variety of subjects, right? Product marketing, or a lot of different product groups might be developing email campaigns, or the brand group, or even something like billing, you know, more the operational or transactional side. All of these sort of parts of organizations are communicating to their customers, and in this case, maybe bombarding Dave. And so as marketing automation has grown up and people have taken advantage of all that it is, some organizations are finding themselves in a very difficult place because we certainly don't want to over-communicate. So what's exciting about that is that we're seeing that because of some of those examples Abby shared today, depending on those marketing interactions, we can actually deliver smarter emails. So, you know, you see the color coding here. We can actually deliver just one email that maybe the user gets over time, but the content blocks change based on their actual real-time interactions. And so this, as content marketers, is starting to change the way we think about building our email or other channel communications. because it's not like we get, the opportunity to draft these long form content. We're actually trying to think more in bite-sized pieces and really monitor the interactions and deliver that user something very specific to the actions that they've taken. But we can't stop with just marketing data. So many of us are familiar with things like web analytics or the media data we have available to us, or maybe you're already running an email or engagement tool, and you can track those data behaviors. We're actually seeing a lot of organizations moving to this space to say, wait, our customers are our customers outside of marketing, and so we need to be able to integrate operational data into those experiences. So things like really working hard to make sure that all of a contact level information rolls up to the business in which the user is a part of, and doing more account-based marketing, as Abby mentioned earlier. Or really thinking through how do we identify how our users are tied to different products that they purchase. Maybe we need more specific product data into our marketing automation systems and tools. Financing, sales data, ways that we can start offering the users more benefit than just content based on their marketing interactions. So that's a really exciting space, but what it's requiring is that business units from across the enterprise within organizations come together and say, how can we start thinking about content differently to provide our users not only product information, but brand level insights? How can we work with our pricing department or our finance team to offer rewards and incentives? And how can we aggregate all the tools and resources we have available to these users to provide really custom communications? So what essentially is happening in this trend is that we're finding that marketers are really moving away from this sort of campaign-based thinking and these big, broad awareness messages to really thinking through, as we've said throughout the whole presentation, who are your users? How can we get really targeted in the questions that they're asking of us? And what are the very, very specific pieces of content that they need? And what data do we have available to not only measure their interaction so that we can deliver that content, but then trigger based on that behavior and push the right information back out to them. And it's really changing the conversation about how we measure users' interactions throughout the journey. How can we build a content effectiveness model so that we know if we're producing a piece of content that it's actually meaningful and we should either build more or less of it? And then how do all of those decisions then drive really what technologies we need to continue to improve that customer experience? So, I think as we've said many times, I'm finding that organizations are, while it was at one time very exciting to jump to the technology and start executing, many are pulling back now and saying, okay, we've done some good things, we've learned a lot from that, but let's sort of recalibrate and think through that customer experience lens. Okay, so you want to do that now? I do want to stop here before Abby closes us out. We got a question, and the question is, isn't clutter still a challenge with so many organizations, all employees, these same high quality, professionally coordinated MA programs? How can we make our very nice marketing automation components stand out more than any other very nice marketing automation components at other organizations? So I think that's a great question, right? This idea that as content marketers, for many years, we felt that we needed to produce so much because there are so many channels in which to deliver that we just found ourselves producing all this content and pushing it out in so many places and just hoping that our users would sort of find it. And so I think that that's a fair question. I think I would come back to this idea that clutter is less of a challenge if you've built that relationship and you've done your homework to understand your users, what their needs and wants and desires are, and really built that relationship to make sure that they want to engage with your brand in the ways that they desire. Abby, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that you want to weigh in on?
I do, thank you. So as people are engaging with your brand, they're going to have different moments where they're more engaged with you than others. And so one thing that we always try to put into our marketing automation journeys, as amazing as we can make them, is that if the person's not engaged, let them drop out, and that's okay, because you don't want to be a source of that clutter, right? So anecdotally, we've seen that before people make a decision, there will be phases or they go and they just binge on your content, right? So they're like on your website for 10 minutes, they're like downloading different stuff, they're on your social feeds, and that's the time when you're super relevant. And that's the time where, not by your choosing, but by theirs, your marketing automation, your content, your data is standing out to them. And then once they make that decision and they make that purchase, they will probably drop back down in engagement. And I think as long as you expect that and you measure it and you know the right time to use that activity, you won't add to the clutter in what people are experiencing in their day-to-day.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Abby. I just think, one of the things on that customer journey is really identifying those moments that matter that Abby mentioned. And so there's high peaks of emotional experience, and those are the right times to hit the customers. But it takes that foundational planning and also making sure that you can actually measure those interactions so that you can cut through the clutter at those critical moments in time. So thank you for submitting that question. All right, Abby, so I'm going to hand it back over to you, and you're going to close us out here talking a little bit about how we take all of this and start to put it into action.
Thank you. So one of the things that I generally get asked at the end of workshops or presentation is, that all sounds great, but how do I get started? So I want to share with you kind of a phased approach that's super generic, so you can definitely make this your own. So we talk a lot to our clients about crawl, walk, run. So one phase might be audit and strategy. So in this stage, you're kind of covering the content pieces that Misty spoke about early on, looking at, do we have personas? Are they still valid? Doing a content audit, figuring out what a journey maybe should look like, and then also auditing what data sources you have and what's in your technology stack today. And that generally will lead to a workshop with stakeholders, right? So let's all get on the same page about what we're doing here. And even though on this slide that phase is shown as one chunk, I would say to you that within each of these phases, I would encourage you to be very agile and iterative, and maybe not agile in kind of the software implementation ideology, but agile in being flexible and iterating and knowing that you may not get it perfect the first time, but you can learn from what you have in the crawl stage. So in phase 2, we have technology. So now that we have strategy and we know our content audit and gaps and can fill them, now let's look at the technology pieces. What systems can we pull from? Where is that data that we need to create those experiences? Is there any tagging in systems that we need to do for content so we know when people are hitting them? And of course, governance, which is not a favorite, I understand that, but it is definitely necessary to make sure that you're staying in compliance with opt-ins and cookies, and when you can send people emails and SMS if you're using that as a channel, and that everybody who is executing campaigns is kind of all on the same page. So the third phase is integration and implementation. So now that you have a good grip on your technology and your governance and everybody's aligned with the strategy, now the exciting time is, let's go ahead and execute on that. And it's tempting to say, whew, we did all this work, the journey is out the door and we're set for the next year, but it's not that easy, right? Part of that execution is also measurement and optimization. So generally when my fellow Semantolites bring me into a project, one of the first questions I ask is, how are we going to measure this? And they're like, maybe we haven't gotten there yet or we're not sure, but definitely have your measurement strategy in mind as you're building and considering your data points, because a lot of time your technology people are going to need to understand that to make sure that everything's trackable in a way that you want to report on it. And then, of course, this kind of becomes a circle versus a square, right? Because once you're into phase 4, where you're optimizing your strategy based on what you've learned, you may go through these cycles again to make sure that you're giving the best content that you possibly can. And the last thing I'll say about that is this isn't easy. There's likely not one person or one team in your organization that can do all this. And I would say that a very small percentage, here the stat is 37% of companies do this in-house by themselves. So I think it's okay to bring in experts from the outside and learn from their experience so that you can be better off the bat. And it's okay to set the expectation that you may not be able to do it all at once, but you can definitely get a start on it and make sure that you build everything in a modular fashion so that you can learn from and add to and get to a place where you really are running through these campaigns and content and create that amazing journey for your customer or prospect. So having said that, we'll leave you with one last poll. I promise this is the last one. So now that you've kind of heard us talk about what we know, can we find out a little bit about leaving today's presentation, what you're excited about, right? Is it, yeah, I'm going to go back and I'm going to formalize that strategy and we're going to write it down and that's the first step to go? Is it, we know the strategy, now we just need to find our technology? Or, yep, Abby, we're doing all that, but we haven't really pushed it out the door. And, oh, yeah, measurement, we probably need to focus on that. And then, you know, Samantha, you guys are spot on. Now we just need to measure what we're doing. So excited to hear what you guys have to say. Ooh, we're a little all over the board here. That's awesome. So half of you are formalizing strategy, another quarter looking for that technology, and then another quarter optimizing what you're doing. Awesome. Well, I hope that the information we've been able to share is helpful in getting you guys to where you want to be. And please feel free to reach out to us. You can find us on social channels. You can reach out to us directly if you have a question. This is the stuff that makes us excited and why we come to work every day. So if you guys have questions, we'd be happy to take you out for coffee and answer those.
Thanks, Abby. And actually, we did have one question already roll in, and so we have a few minutes here before the top of the hour. The question is, what about using AI and machine learning? And I love that question because I can tell you, another one of our technology directors here at Samantha came to me about a year ago and, you know, said, Misty, we got to be focused on AI. And I thought that was like way out there. But the truth of the matter is it's on top of us. And many of these tools that we're actually leveraging today can predict. As long as you do the foundational learning, you can actually, track those users' behavior and make predictions about where they're going to go next. Abby, I don't know if you want to add to that or have thoughts on how that's going to start impacting some of our clients' campaigns right now.
Yeah, I would love to have a bit of that. So there are all different kinds of levels of machine learning and AI, anything from automated A/B testing. So you can have a program that, I want to send these 2 emails with these 2 subject lines, and in 2 days, you decide the winner and send it out, right? So that's all automated and learning as it goes and kind of doing that for you. So that's kind of like a starting step maybe, all the way to, something like Salesforce has Einstein engagement, where you're taking into consideration all of these pieces that we've talked about today, all those data points and activity, and coming up with this is what you should probably do next. So I think there is a lot of technology out there to help you make decisions and help you gather that data. But I would say definitely take it slow, right? And find the right machine learning that matches where you are in your marketing. And then I would also say that no matter how much machine learning and technology there is, it's never going to replace what you guys do on the daily, which is making sure that the content that you have has that human voice to it and speaks to the pain points of that person. So I think that would probably be a whole other webinar series to jump into that. So I'll leave you with, there are different levels of machine learning and AI, and I would want you to look and consider which one's the right for you at this time.
Excellent, Abby. Yeah, and the only thing I'd add to that is obviously, to do AI well, it requires a volume of data and activity. So if that's something that your organizations are talking about, definitely start now to start monitoring those user interactions. So we only have about 5 minutes left, but we did get another fun question here. Are you going to use our poll data to create personas for each of us and market to us? I think that's a really fun because as a marketing agency, we do need to practice what we preach. And so we are absolutely going through a process really identifying how we want to personify our targets. I can't necessarily say that the poll data is going to tie back to that one-to-one, but we are going through our own experience of monitoring, user interaction so that we can continue to tie them back to the personas that we've defined and the content strategy that we need to continue to build in the future. So any feedback for us in terms of how this content today, would fit into your needs as marketers is super helpful. Abby, do you have any thoughts?
You guys are so smart. That's exactly what I was doing the whole time. So if in that first poll, we'd said 100% of the people on the webinar focus on marketing automation technology, then Misty probably would have dug into that what is persona and content audit piece more versus the technology side. So we did kind of use that approach in the webinar to make sure that, again, we were being relevant in talking to you guys on what you needed to know. So it's great that you caught on to that. Gold star for whoever asked that one.
Okay, guys. Well, we're going to wrap it up here. I think I just leave you with, when Abby showed that timeline slide, she had that little icon that called out a workshop. And I think that that's critical. If you're leaving this saying, I don't know where to start, or I want to start having these conversations, encourage you to bring together the right stakeholders to at least start the conversation. And as Abby mentioned, we're always here for you if you need to bounce ideas off of someone. So good luck with your efforts, and I hope you guys have a great day.